Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaudamani Pracharane Nirvisheshashan Prashchata Deshatanane. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhupada Sri Advaita Gadadhara Krishna 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 Hari Ram. The entire world was devoid of spiritual practice, and people were simply attached to sense gratification. And in Navadip, in Nadia, prior to the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and those materialists would criticize the Vaishnavas that, why are you chanting so loudly? You're just making such a raucous and going and collecting alms. Let's break down their houses and break down their doors. Sunyadeki, Bhaktagan, Shakal Shanshar, Ha Krishna Balaya Dukkha, Bhavya Apar. We're reading from the 16th chapter of the Haridas of Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, which describes the glories of Srila Haridas Thakur. And Vrindavan Thakur in this chapter, 16th chapter, he's beginning by describing the environment, the circumstances in which Thakur Haridas appeared. Actually, we see that from many angles, Thakur Haridas's circumstances weren't very favorable for practicing Bhagavad Bhakti. He wasn't born in a Hindu family, and he was rejected from his own ethnic group, and he wasn't quite fully accepted in the Hindu community, because so these things. So he was very, and just remember who he is. In Shidabakula, when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was speaking to Haridas Thakur just before his departure, he mentioned to him, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentioned to Thakur that in a previous, you were Lord Brahma in your previous life. So he, obviously these circumstances that he's in, that Haridas Thakur is in, these circumstances they're not random. Obviously, he's in these awkward circumstances for a specific reason, to, with his life, exemplify a principle of the Lord, of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Sankirtan movement, many principles. In this particular chapter, Adikanda of Chaitanya Bhagavat, Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur, this is the first introduction, our first description of Srila Haridas Thakur and his special qualifications and his extraordinary character and life. This is the first time it's being discussed in the authorized biography of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, chapter 16 of Adikanda. And Navadip was such that prior to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's appearance, that the practice of Bhagavad Bhakti, pure devotional service, was not seen. Few Vaishnavas there, that the chanting was going on in the house of Srivas Thakur, and Haridas Thakur was also an associate of those Vaishnavas in Navadip, and how he came to become such, we'll describe this evening. So first, here, Srila Vrindavan Thakur is describing the environment, the sky in which the brilliant moon of Haridas Thakur appears. He's describing the background. Shunyadeki Bhaktagan Shakal Shanshar Ha Krishna Balya Dukkha Bhavmena Apar. The devotees would Ha Krishna Balya, exclaiming in great exasperation, Dukkha Bhavmena Apar, in the extreme unhappiness, seeing the Shakal Shanshar as Shunya. The entire world is as zero, as void, because of the practice of devotional service was not prominent, and the Sankirtan movement, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, was not being accepted by the people in general. And in fact, they created obstacles for the Vaishnavas, the people in general, and criticized the Vaishnavas and insulted them. So this is the environment at Haridas Thakur. And then they're smartest, they're insulting the Vaishnavas, what to speak of the way they deal with, and we'll see in this chapter, the way they specifically envy that the Smarta Brahmins have for Thakur Haridas, that the envy, because he's so transcendental and such a liberated soul, and he's not even in Varnashram, and which is the whole platform upon which the Brahmins draw their power from the Varnashram system. Haridas Thakur, not even in the Varnashram system, and yet respected by so many people and revered and honored. So the Smartas were envious in behavior, and others we'll see in the evening that we'll discuss about various leaders of the society and of the government became envious of Haridas Thakur. And how he deals with all of this is very exemplary in his mission, in his service of establishing principles of tolerance and humility in the movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Henukale tatai ailo Haridas Shuddha Vishnu Bhakti Jar Vigrahe Prakash. This is text number 15 of chapter 16, text number 15 of chapter 16. We're reading that. At that time, Henukale tatai ailo Haridas. He arrived at that time when the materialistic people were criticizing the Vaishnavas and everyone was wasting their human life in ritualistic karmakanda activities. Shuddha Vishnu Bhakti Jar Vigraher Prakash Prakash. His very Vigraha, his very form is Shuddha Vishnu Bhakti Prakash, a manifestation. It is a personification of pure devotion to Lord Vishnu. Ebe Shunu Haridas Thakurer Kochar Jaha Shravane Krishna Bhaive Sharvata. Ebe Shunu, just listen to this. Ebe Shunu Haridas Thakurer Kochar. These descriptions of Srila Haridas Thakur. Jaha Shravane, those who hear them, Krishna Bhaive Sharvata, certainly they will attain Krishna. Buddhan Gramate Avatirno Haridas Shai Bhagya Shai Shabdeshe Kirtan Prakash. Vrindavan Das Thakur is describing that the birthplace of Srila Haridas Thakur, Buddhan Gramate, you can still visit that place. Jessore, in the district of Jessore, Shri Thakur's community. We have our center there. We have our Sanatana Shriti Tirtha as a major ISKCON center in this part of Bangladesh, where Haridas Thakur is from, this Joshua area. And we've been fortunate to spend extensive time in that project. Even we were once on the Rup Sanatana Shriti Tirtha Sankirtan party. We traveled with the Sankirtan preachers of that temple for some time, Rup Sanatana Shriti Tirtha, throughout Bangladesh. And we spent time there, and that's the birthplace of Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, and not far from that is the birthplace of Srila Haridas Thakur. So, Shai Bhagya, Shai Desh, Shai Shabdesh, Shai Kirtan Prakash. That whole area is so fortunate because Haridas Thakur appeared there. Shai Desh, Kirtan Prakash. So many people in that land took up the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, and it's true. It's very true. Amongst the Hindus in East Bengal, they're all familiar with the Nam Sankirtan, chanting of the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Muhammad, Shaladam, Vaitrisha, Aitanta, this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is given. They know this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Haraya Nama Krishna, Yadavaya, Madhavaya Gopal, Govindaram, Srimad Rushadan. They know this mantra, they chant this mantra all through this land, East Bengal, Kirtan Prakash. Why is that? Shai Bhagye, Shai Shab, Deshe Kirtan Prakash Bhagi because of his association, because Haridas Thakur appearing there. Lord Brahma, who particularly came to take the birth as the lowest possible birth you could possibly consider in terms of practicing Krishna consciousness and associating with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, a sannyasi Vaishnava Brahmin. So completely unqualified in terms of the social standards and social eligibility, social adhikar, but he accepted that particular birth for a specific reason, to show these principles that Dinna Jokta Chilo Hariname Udharila. It doesn't matter how as degraded as you can imagine, Hariname Udharila, the holy name will deliver you. And Haridas Thakur was such the acharya of chanting the holy name. Haridas, this is a couple of verses from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, which describes something of this particular history. It says text 99 and 100 of Antalila chapter 3, Antalila chapter 3, Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. Haridas jabe nij grihe tyag koila bena poler bon modei Kotodin Rohilo Benapole, Bon Modei, in the forest, in the jungle, Bon Vrindavan, and Bon Modei, Benapole, in that town called Benapole, in the forest. Kotodin Rohilo, Haridas Thakur, he remained there for some time at that place. Now, you can still see, you can visit that place. It's still there. It's called Benapole. The town is still called Benapole. It's the major border crossing between Kolkata and Dhaka. So all overland, India, Bangladesh, crossing, it goes through that Benapole border. It's a very, very big operation there, Benapole. And we've been through that. In years gone by, we passed through that border quite a lot of times. They knew me at that place, the immigration people. Come on, and they knew me. I traveled through that border so often. And Haridas Thakur, the place where this Bon Modde Kotadin Rohela in the forest, this place you can visit, there's one temple there. Near John Bonnet, Kutir Kori, Tulashi Shebon, Ratre Dine, Tin Loka Nam Shankirtan. Nirjan Bonnet, alone in the forest, Kudir Kori, building a small cottage, Tulashi Shebon, he worships Tulasi. Ratre Dine, Tin Loka Nam Shankirtan, and day and night he chants, Ratre Dine, day and night, Tin Loka, 300,000 names, Nam Shankirtan, he chants loudly, Nam Shankirtan. He chants. That's loud chanting, Nam Shankirtan. So the incident there, which is described there, is that one Ramchandra Khan, who was a leader, he was a jamidar, a landholder, an influential person in the government there. So he became envious of the fact that so many people, they showed so much respect to Srila Haridas Thakur. And he devised a plan to have Haridas Thakur's reputation destroyed by sending a prostitute there to pollute the mind of Srila Haridas Thakur. Now that Leela is described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And that's an example of how Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami describes that in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, he supplements sections of Mahaprabhu's Leela that weren't described in the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat. So because here this incident mentions that he remained in Benapole, but it doesn't mention the details of delivering the prostitute, it just carries on to describe him now journeying on to Shantipur. So that detailed Leela you'll find completely described in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So in that way we can see that one requires to study both these books, the Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat and the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, to gain a full picture of the Chaitanya avatar. particularly Navadip Leela being described in Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat, and Mahaprabhu's pastimes after sannyas being described in the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, and particularly his teachings. Taramade Choi Bochur Gomon Agamon, Kabu Dokin, Kabu Gold, Kabu Vrindavan. The Madhya Lila is summarized by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami. Choi Bochur, 6 years. Taramade Choi Bochur. Gomon Agamon, going and coming from Jagannath Puri. Kabu Dokin, he went to South India. Kabu Gold, he went to Bengal and delivered Rupan Sanatan and came back. Kabu Vrindavan, and he went to Vrindavan. And came back and instructed Rupa and Sanatan and delivered Prakasananda Saraswati. So in this way, in his going and coming, he imparted his teachings. So that's the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the Chaitanya Bhagavat continues, the 16th chapter, Adi Gonda, text number 17. Koto din Thakia Oilo Ganga Tire Ashiya Rohila Pulia Shanti Pure Pulia Shanti Pure. So Kotodin Takia, after staying there for some days in Benapal at that place, and that incident happening, which was described in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Kotodin Takia Oilo Ganga Tire, after staying there a few days, Oilo Ganga Tire, he came to the banks of the Ganga. So just imagine Bengal at that time, the open plains of Bengal stretching all the way from as far west Bengal, all the way to Ganga flowing through the middle, and then all the way to East Bengal. And so that's a long way, and Ganga splits, there's Padma River. That whole area now is divided halfway through a national border, India and Bangladesh. But then it was just an open Bengal, Mongol Bhumi, in between Padma River, above that is North Bengal, and Ganga, that whole area where all of these great souls appeared. Mahaprabhu and so many of his associates appeared in East Bengal. So the Ganga really, it is the center of Mahaprabhu's pastimes in Ganga and Mayapur, and from all over Bengal, in fact all over India, but particularly all over Bengal, the devotees came from Sri Hatta. They came Srivas Thakur, Advaita Thakur, Shivananda Sen, from Sri Hatta, from Chattogram. They came Mukunda Datta, Vasudev Datta, Sri Pundarik Vidyanidhi Mahodai, Gadadha Pandit. They all came from Chattogram area. Mahaprabhu's parents came from Sri Hatta, particularly those areas, East Bengal. And here Haridas Thakur, he's from Burdhan. Narottam Thakur, he's from North Bengal. But they all come to the Ganga. Ganga, so important in Mahaprabhu's pastimes. So Haridas appeared on the bank of he arrived at the bank of the Ganga, probably the first time in his life, probably we can imagine he comes to the Ganga, perhaps, because that's it. In those days, you leave that your village, you don't come back. He's a wandering mendicant. He comes to the bank of the Ganga. As we hear, it's not described, but already when he arrived in Benapal, already he built a cottage, Ratra Dinetin Lokanam Shankirtan, and he's called Haridas. So already he's chanting 300,000 names a day, and he's already called Haridas even before he gets some initiation. He gets some initiation from Advaita Thakur, but already he's chanting 300,000 names every day. And it's not that he does it sometimes. That means he maintained that vow his whole life. That means that when Mahaprabhu came to him in the Gambhira, and Mahaprabhu said, you can reduce the chanting of your rounds. He's still chanting that. I mean, it's not that he did it in the beginning and he became famous and then he hung the beads up, A vow means a vow. He's doing that all the time, even during Mahaprabhu's pastimes, Navadip pastimes, and he's traveling and preaching, and that's Haridas Thakur. It doesn't give up that vow. So he comes to the bank of the Ganga, and then the first place there, if you're coming straight from Benapal, from where the birthplace of Haridas Thakur, Joshua, through Benapal, and then you'll come to this Pulia. That'll be the first time that you reach. You go straight for the Ganga. The closest point will be the Pulya, Shantipur. And these villages there, the name here that's given 500 years ago, these villages are still the same name. Pulya, we visited a few weeks ago where Haridas Thakur stayed, and you can see the cave. Pulya, that's described a little later. We won't describe tonight, we'll describe later. Pulya, the cave. He arrived in Pulya and Shantipur. And
so मेरे ख्याल से more than 20 people से ISKCON में है और Srila
Srila Vrindavan Thakur herein describes begins to describe the character of Srila Haridas Thakur in this, as he's arrived here on the bank of the Ganga. Bishoy shukete birokter agraganno. Bishoy shukete birokter. He has no interest. Birokter agragan. He's extremely advanced in the abandoning detachment to sense enjoyment. Bishoy shukete viraktir agraganno Krishna nam puripunna Shri Bodhan dhanno. Because Krishna nam puripunna is filled with the holy name, puripunna, filled with the holy name, Shri Bodhan dhanna. He's so attractive. He's so extraordinary beauty around his speaking and his features. Sri Bodhan is speaking, his presence, his presentation was extremely attractive. Never for a moment did he feel any apathy toward chanting the holy name. He was occasionally, he would just dance, he would cry, occasionally these symptoms, and sometimes lay unconscious, these various symptoms. Sometimes he spoke in mysterious languages and then later explained the meaning of what he said. That was pretty extraordinary. Just when he began dancing in a kirtan, Prabhu Haridas Matro Nritte Prabhishele Prabhu Haridas Matro Nritte Prabhishele Shaka Ashia Dar Sri Vigraher Mile. Prabhu Haridas Matra Nritte Prabheshile. He enters into the kirtan. He begins dancing. When he begins dancing, Ashia, Dar, Shibigrahed, Mile, all of these symptoms of crying, horripilation, laughing, fainting, perspiring, just when he begins dancing, these symptoms overwhelm him. And people will gather around him just to see the unrestricted tears of love of Godhead that flowed profusely from his eyes, drenching his entire form. Even the materialists and the atheists and the smarters, they're all completely marveled. Fulia Gramir Joto Brahman Shakal Shabai Tahane Deki Hoilo Bibho. Even the Brahman Shakal, even all the Brahmins of Pulya. Now, that place, even now, that place is the Brahminical community is very prevalent in Shantipur, very influential in Shantipur, the Brahminical community now. What to speak of 500 years ago? And this was the headquarters of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas in Bengal, where Thakur Advaita had his residence. Shantipur really was the headquarters. Prabhupada was considering making ISKCON's headquarters at Shantipur. He was considering that on occasion. And Prabhupada used to visit Shantipur, and subsequently Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he performed such pastimes in Shantipur. On several occasions, at least we could discuss at least 4 or 5 occasions where there's very extensive descriptions of very elaborate and intimate pastimes performed in Shantipur, the house of Advaita Acharya. So this Brahminical community in Shantipur is very well established. Pulia Gramer Jokta Brahman Shakal, and all of these Brahmins in Pulia Gram, Shabai Tahani Deki Hoilo Bibal, they're astonished seeing the character and the behavior of Srila Haridas Thakur. Shabai Tahane Bolo Janmilo Bishash Pulia Rohilem Prabhu Haridas. They all borrowed Janma Vishwas. They all had great faith in the character and the person of Haridas Thakur. Puliya Rohile Prabhu Haridas, and in this way he remained peacefully in Puliya Gram, chanting the holy name and bathing. And probably at this place where the cave is, or maybe he went to the cave later after this. But now we'll hear the incident of him being arrested. Just, you know, that's the point here, that he's not causing any harm to anyone. He's certainly not causing a disturbance in any way. And yet still, the nature of an envious person is that it's very intolerable for them to see somebody else enjoying what they want to enjoy, especially if they consider themselves more qualified than that person. So this is what happened. The local Muslim, the local Mogul, known as the Qazi, he became envious of Haridas, and he reported to the Nawab. Now, which Nawab this is, not sure. Maybe the father of Nawab Hussain Shah, because this whole incident is happening even before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's arrived in Pulia, whether or not he's met with Advaita Thakur yet. Maybe he has. Maybe this incident is after spending time there with Advaita Thakur, perhaps. But in any case, when he arrived, the incident in Benapole with the prostitute, that was before the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this may have been before, or it may have been shortly after the appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this Nawab was probably the father of Nawab Hussain Shah. So then they arrested Haridas Thakur, and then they brought him, first of all, they brought him into the jail, and all of the prisoners, they were so elated to see that such a great soul, Haridas Thakur, as was within their midst. Parama Vaishnav Haridas Mahashai Tane Dekhi Bondi Dukka Hoibek Khai. Just by seeing him, Tar Dekhi Bondi Dukka, the suffering of being in jail, Hoibek Khai, it was completely destroyed. Param Vaishnav Haridas Mahashai, seeing that great soul, Param Vaishnav Haridas Mahashai, Param Vaishnav. Param Vaishnav. That's a nice way to glorify somebody. You learn the language in our culture. Param Vaishnav. Param Vaishnav is a great Vaishnav. Param Vaishnav is what Haridas Mahashai, Param Vaishnav. We have many Param Vaishnavas in our movements. This is called someone a Param Vaishnav. That's a great honorific title. Param Vaishnav. So when they saw him, the prisoners, they requested their guards to be able to have unrestricted access to Srila Haridas Thakur, and it appears that the guards allowed them that access. And when they came before Haridas Thakur, when they saw him, they saw his beautiful features. Ajanu lombito bujo kamonayon sharga monohar mukichandra anupam. Ajanu lombito bujo, his arms were extended down to below his knees. Ajanu lombito bujo kamonayon, his eyes are like lotus petals. Sharva monohar mukichandra anupam, his charming moon-like face, Mukha Chandra, is anupam, so charming, and it is enchanting everyone. Beauty of Haridas Thakur. And then they were so, considering themselves to be so fortunate, they requested from Srila Haridas Thakur to take a blessing, to give them a blessing. And Haridas Thakur spoke that Tak ekon ache jena rupai Gupta Ashirvad Gori Haridas Kohutuke. Kohutuke, yeah. He's just saying, you stay the way you are. Ekonacho, Jerupe, you stay the way, tak, you stay the way you are. And they were a little bit, they felt a bit dejected actually. What sort of a benediction is this? Stay the way we are. So Haridas Thakur mentioned it's a Gupta Ashirvad Gori. It is a hidden blessing. They couldn't exactly understand it. So he had to explain to them that I meant that now because you're here and you're taking advantage of my association and you're very eager about Krishna consciousness, that you remain that way. You remain that way and eternally. That was my blessing to you. And then he subsequently, he duly went on to reassure them that within 2 or 3 days they will be released from the prison. But Haridas Thakur begins to instruct them that Ebe Nitto Krishna Nam Krishna Chinton Shobe Mile Korite Tak Onugon. So this way you remain Tak Onugon, you stay like this always in the association of each other. Nitto Krishna Nam Krishna Chinton, discussing about Krishna and chanting about Krishna. And then Haridas Thakur begins to share something about his own consciousness. Which is very instructive. But his own consciousness, which is very instructive. Because it tells us something about the qualities of a Param Vaishnav. Sarvaji proti doya darshan amar Krishnai dritha bhakti hoik tomar sharvakar. Krishnai dritha bhakti hoik tomar. I'm desiring that you develop deep devotion to Krishna. Krishnai dritha bhakti hoik tomar. And Sarvaji proti doya darshan amar. Regarding the way I perceive people and that I look mercifully upon all living entities. Sarvaji prati doya darshan amar. I look upon all living entities in a way as to be merciful upon them. So in this way, after spending some time in consoling the prisoners in the jail, Haridas Thakur was brought before the Mughal Kaji and the Nawab. Oti Manohar Tejo Dekiya Tahan Param Gauraver Boshibare Diloshtan. Ati Manohar Teja, extremely enchanting effulgence, Dekiya Tahan, they saw emanating from his body. Oti Manohar Teja, an extremely enchanting and beautiful effulgence. Param Gaurave, with great respect. Param Gaurave. Boshibare Diloshtan, they gave him a seat, offered him a place to sit. And then the Nawab, you can say he's more relaxed. The other guy, Qazi, he's the one that was so envious and he's agitated, he's upset, he wants, some serious punishment. The Nawab, you can say, is a little more relaxed, a little more affectionate in his dealings. He begins to speak in a relaxed way. What sort of mentality has come upon you that you had the good fortune of being born in our community, and but you've given up that culture and you behave like a Hindu? We do not even eat the rice of the Hindus. So why have you given up the good fortune of your high birth and you act like a low class Hindu? Asking these questions. It's not good to discard one's own race, one's land, one's religion for another. How do you expect to obtain the liberated platform if you behave like that? So just recite, look, all you have to do is just recite something from your own scripture here about our own religious rites. You recite some of those before here, this assembly. They're here. There's many ministers, many senators. They're there in the Nawab's assembly hall. And Haridas has been brought before them all. And now the discussion goes on. And so he's saying, you just recite this here before. This would be between many, in front of many of the leaders of the whole kingdom. You recite that, that'll be sufficient. So then he's sitting there, and then Haridas Thakur responds that Bolite lagila tare modur utor shinobab shabai ekai ishor. The instructions here, the preaching of Haridas Thakur is such a realized level. In a few simple statements, he explains the entire science of the Bhagavad Tattva, Atma Tattva, Bhagavad Bhakti, the Goswami Siddhanta, in a few lines we'll hear. Nam Sankirtan. Bolite lagila tare modur utor, very sweet reply, modur utor. Shinobab, listen sir, Shinobab. Shabai eki ishar. Everyone, there is only one God for all living entities. Shabai eki ishar. Everyone, there's only one Lord God. There's only one Supreme Ishar for all of us. Namatro bed kore Hindu jabone. Paramartha ek kore kohe. Korane Purane. Namatro, only in the name, Bed Kore, is there some distinction. Hindu, there Jabon, between the Hindus and between the others. Only the differences in the name. Paramartha ek. Kohe Koran Purane. The Quran and the Puranas, they speak the same of truth, that God is one. Then he begins to describe Ek Shuddha Nitya Bashtu Akhanda Abhyay Paripunna Hoy Boyshe Shabai Hriday Paripunna Hoya Boyshe Shabai Hriday Ek Shuddha Nitya Bashtu one, pure, Nitya Vastu, eternal Vastu. What's the meaning? Vastu, Vastavama, the Vastu Shivadam. Vastu means it, the thing, Vastavva. Nitya Vastu, presence. It's eternally present. And it's pure, Nitya Vastu. Abhra, Akhanda Abhra. Akhanda, you cannot divide it. Akhanda. Abhra, it never ends. It is inexhaustible. Akhanda Abhyay, Paripunna, Hoya, Boshe, Shavai, Hriday. And that Akhanda Abhyay, Nitya Vastu, is present in full in the heart of all beings. So he's described the Brahman platform there, the Akhanda Abhyay, and the Paripunna Shavai Hriday described the Paramatma feature. And now he describes about the personality, qualities of Godhead. Shai Prabhu Nam Gun Shakal Jagate Bolen Shakale Matra Nija Matra Nija Shastre Matre. Shai Prabhu Nam Guna Shakal Jagate Bolen Shakale Matra Nija Shastra Mate. So Shai Prabhu Nam Gun, that Prabhu's name and qualities, Shakal Jagate, throughout the entire universe. Bolen Shakal Matra Nija Shastra Mate. In their own scriptures, they're simply, throughout the Shakal Jagate, all the different religions, throughout the whole universe, Shastra Mate, throughout their own, Nija Shastra Mate, throughout their own scriptures, Shai Prabhu Nam Gun. They describe that Prabhu's name and his qualities. So in this way, Haridas Thakur presents his case. Mahashai, Tumi, Ebe, Koroho Bichar, you examine my circumstance. Jodi Dosh Take, Shashti, Koroho Amar. If you feel that I have committed an offense, then certainly you can punish me. So many in the court of the Nawab were influenced and purified, hearing the words of Srila Haridas Thakur and taking his association. However, the envious Qazi was still determined, and he carried on to convince the Nawab that you must punish this man because others will become influenced by him. It's a great disgrace to our Mughal community if he behaves in that way, and it's so public. It's a great insult. So either he preaches from his own scripture, or he has to be punished. Punar bole muluker poti are bhai. Punar bole muluker poti are bhai. Apana shastra bolo tobe chintanai. You just look. You read Apana shastra bolo. You say something from your own scriptures here. Recite something from our own scriptures. Are bhai. He's trying to. This is a simple thing to do. And otherwise, you're going to have to be punished, and then you'll be forced to do it anyway. So just recite something from your own scripture there. And then there's a famous statement that Haridas Thakur makes in this connection, which is often quoted by the Gaudiya Acharyas, that Kondo Kondo Hoi Deho Jai Jodi Pran Tobo Ami Bodhane. Kondo Kondo Hoi Deho Joy Jodi Pran Tabo Ami Bodhane Na Chari Harinam. Kondo Kondo Hoi Deho Joy. Even if you cut me into pieces, Joy Jodi Pran, and I give up this body. Tabo Ami Bodhane Na Chari Harinam. But I will never give up chanting the name of Hari with this mouth. I'll never give up chanting. I mean, Vadane Nachari, in my speaking, I will never abandon, I will never stop chanting the holy name. So then the Nawab, he turns to the Qazi and he says, so what is your decision about him? And the Qazi, he bellows out, lash him in 22 marketplaces until he dies. So then they called in all of the sentries, sentries came in and took Haridas Thakur away. So let's discuss that. What happened then, we'll discuss that, and what happens when Haridas Thakur begins, because we won't begin that description. It'll take some time to describe fully the circumstances of him being beaten and taken through the marketplaces. So we'll describe that in a later meeting next Sunday, most probably. So are there any questions? Okay, thank you very much. So we'll conclude there. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.